pole of inaccessibility marks a location that is the most challenging to reach owing to its remoteness from geographical features that could provide access. Often it refers to the most distant point from the coastline. The term describes a geographic construct, not an actual physical phenomenon. Subject to varying definitions, it is of interest mostly to explorers and adventurers. Northern pole of inaccessibility. The northern pole of inaccessibility, sometimes known as the Arctic pole of inaccessibility, or just Arctic pole, is located on the Arctic Ocean pack ice at a distance furthest from any land mass. Long thought to lie at 84°03 euro squared N 174°51 euro squared W, it was 661 kilometers from the North Pole, 1,453 kilometers north of Barrow, Alaska, and equidistant from the three closest land masses, Ellesmere Island, Franz Josef Land, and the New Siberian Islands, 1,094 kilometers away. This follows from simple geometry, where 3 points suffice to define a circle. The pole of inaccessibility is then defined as the center of the largest circle that can be drawn within the Arctic Ocean without including any land. It was first crossed by Sir Hubert Wilkins, who flew by aircraft in 1927. In 1958, a Soviet icebreaker reached this point. Owing to the constant motion of the pack ice, no permanent structure can exist at that pole. According to some reports, the first person to reach the spot on foot was Sir Wally Herbert, who arrived by dog sled in 1968. Other reports speak of this pole as being still unconquered as of explorer Jim McNeill's unsuccessful attempt in 2006. According to McNeill, Herbert did not quite make the pole, whose position has also now been more accurately determined. A recent review of satellite cartography revealed that the pole actually lies at 85°48 euro squared N 176°9 euro squared W, 214 kilometers away from the previous location, 1,008 kilometers from Ellesmere, Comshamalets and Henrietta Islands. Southern pole of inaccessibility. The southern pole of inaccessibility is the point on the Antarctic continent most distant from the Southern Ocean. A variety of coordinate locations have been given for this pole. The discrepancies are due to the question of whether the coast is measured to the grounding line or to the edges of ice shelves, the difficulty of determining the location of the solid coastline, the movement of ice sheets and improvements in the accuracy of surveyed data over the years, as well as possible typographical errors. The pole of inaccessibility commonly refers to the site of the Soviet Union research station mentioned below, which lies at 82°06 euro squared S 54°58 euro squared E. This lies 878 kilometers from the South Pole, at an elevation of 3,718 m. Using different criteria, the Scott Polar Research Institute locates this pole at 85°50 euro squared S 65°47 euro squared E. According to thepoles.com, the point farthest from the sea accounting only for the Antarctic land surface proper is at 82°53 euro squared 14 euro cubed S 55°4 euro squared 30 euro cubed E, and the farthest point when ice sheets are taken into account is 83°50 euro squared 37 euro cubed S 65°43 euro squared 30 euro cubed E. These points, calculated by the British Antarctic Survey, are quoted as being the most accurate measure available. The southern pole of inaccessibility is far more remote and difficult to reach than the geographic South Pole. On December 14, 1958, the Third Soviet Antarctic Expedition for International Geophysical Year research work, led by Yevgeny Tolstikov, established the temporary pole of inaccessibility station at 82°06 euro squared S 54°58 euro squared E. A second Russian team returned there in 1967. Today, a building still remains at this location, marked by a bust of Vladimir Lenin that faces towards Moscow, and protected as a historical site. Inside the building, there is a golden visitor's book for those who make it to the site to sign. On December 4, 2006, Team N2I, consisting of Henry Cookson, Rupert Longston, Rory Sweet and Paul Landry, embarked on an expedition to be the first to reach the historic Pole of Inaccessibility location without direct mechanical assistance, using a combination of traditional man-hauling and kite skiing. The team reached the old abandoned station on January 20, 2007, rediscovering the forgotten statue of Lenin left there by the Soviets some 48 years previously. The explorers were picked up from the spot by a plane from Vostok Base to Progress Base and taken back to Cape Town on the Academic Fyodorov, a Russian polar research vessel. The team found that only the bust on top of the building remained visible. The rest was buried under the snow. On December 11, 2005, at 7:57 UTC, Ramacube den Larramendi, Juan Manuel Vallejo, and Ignacio Oficialdegui, members of the Spanish Transantarctic Expedition, reached for the first time in history the southern pole of inaccessibility at 82 degree 53 euro squared 14 euro cubed s 55 degree 04 euro squared 30 euro cubed e, updated that year by the British Antarctic Survey. The team continued their journey towards the second southern pole of inaccessibility, the one that accounts for the ice shelves as well as the continental land, and they were the first expedition to reach it, on December 14, 2005, at 83 degree 50 euro squared 37 euro cubed s 65 degree 43 euro squared 30 euro cubed e. Both achievements took place within an ambitious pioneer crossing of the eastern Antarctic plateau that started at Novolazarevskaya Base and ended at Progress Base after more than 4,500 kilometers. This was the fastest polar journey ever achieved without mechanical aid, with an average rate of around 90 kilometers per day and a maximum of 311 kilometers per day, using kites as power source. On December 27, 2011, Sebastian Copeland and partner Eric McNair Landry also reached the 82 degree 06 euro squared s 54 degree 58 euro squared east southern pole of inaccessibility, departing from Novolazarevskaya Base on their way to the South Pole to complete the first partial crossing of Antarctica through both poles, over 4,000 kilometers. As mentioned above, due to improvements in technology and the position of the continental edge of Antarctica being debated, the exact position of our best estimate of the pole of inaccessibility may alter. However, for the convenience of sport expeditions, a fixed point is preferred, and the Soviet station has been used for this role. This has been recognized by the Guinness Book of Records in regard to Team N2I's expedition in 2006 and Euro 2007. Oceanic pole of inaccessibility. The Oceanic pole of inaccessibility is the place in the ocean that is farthest from land. It lies in the South Pacific Ocean, 2,688 kilometers from the nearest lands, Duchi Island in the north, Motunui in the northeast, and Mayor Island in the south. Chatham Island lies farther west, and southern Chile in the east. This location is also referred to as Point Nemo, a reference to Jules Verne's Captain Nemo. Continental poles of inaccessibility. Eurasia . In Eurasia, the continental pole of inaccessibility is the place on land that is farthest from the ocean, and it lies in northwestern China, near the Kazakhstan border. Earlier calculations suggested that it is 2,645 kilometers from the nearest coastline, located approximately 320 kilometers north of the city of Ayera 1/4 mqi, in the Xinjiang Autonomous Region of China, in the Zhuozhou and Ilocin Desert. The nearest settlements to this location are Oxtolgay town at 46 degree 34 euro squared n 85 degree 58 euro squared e, about 50 kilometers to the northwest, Xosgat township at 46 degree 20 euro squared n 86 degree 22 euro squared e, about 20 kilometers to the west, and Suluk at 46 degree 15 euro squared n 86 degree 50 euro squared e, about 10 kilometers to the east. However, the previous pole location disregards the Gulf of Ob as part of the oceans, and a recent study proposes two other locations as the ones farther from any ocean, EPIA 144.29 degree n 82.19 degree early/44.29. 82.19 and EPIA 245.28 degree n 88.14 degree early/45.28. 88.14, located respectively at 2,510 A plus or minus 10 km and 2,514 A plus or minus 7 km from the oceans. These points lie in a close triangle about the Dzungarian Gate, a significant historical gateway to migration between the east and west. Elsewhere in Xinjiang, the location 43 degree 40 a euro squared 52 a euro cubed n 87 a degree 19 a euro squared 52 a euro cubed e in the southwestern suburbs of Iera 1/4 mqi was designated by local geography experts as the center point of Asia in 1992, and a monument to this effect was erected there in the 1990s. The site is a local tourist attraction. Coincidentally, the continental and oceanic poles of inaccessibility have a similar radius. The Eurasian poles EPIA1 and EPIA2 are about 178 km closer to the ocean than the oceanic pole is to land. North America In North America, the continental pole of inaccessibility is in southwest South Dakota about 11 km north of the town of Allen, located 1,650 km from the nearest coastline at 43.36 a degree N 101.97 a degree W/43.36. Minus 101.97 I. The Canadian pole of inaccessibility is allegedly in Jackfish River, Alberta 59903 a degree N 112.82 a degree W/59.03. Minus 112.82 I, a few kilometers up the Peace River from where the Jackfish River flows into the former. South America In South America, the continental pole of inaccessibility is in Brazil at 14.05 a degree S 56.85 a degree W/minus 14.05. Minus 56.85 I, near Arena Polis. Australia In Australia, the continental pole of inaccessibility is located either at 23.17 a degree S 132.27 a degree E/minus 23.17. 132.27 I or at 23 a degree 2 a euro squared S 132 a degree 10 a euro squared E, 920 km from the nearest coastline. The nearest town is Papunya, Northern Territory, about 30 km to the southwest of both locations. Africa In Africa, the pole of inaccessibility is at 5.65 a degree N 26.17 a degree E/5.65. 26.17, 1,814 km from the coast, close to the tri-point of the Central African Republic, South Sudan, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, as well as close to the town of Obo. See also, Pole of inaccessibility, Geographical pole, extreme points of Earth, land and water hemispheres, Geographical Center. References. External links, Team N2I reaches for POI and found Lenin. How to calculate PIAs.